holding his hand the entire time. For such a shitty, worst moment of my entire life, it was very peaceful. So I guess when Eddie passed, he passed in a very peaceful manner, which is, I mean, I guess comforting in some way, obviously, but he did talk about the intensity that his father went through health-wise, which was just unbelievable and beyond what we even knew. It really was intense. Some of his health situations that Howard got into, all kinds of stuff here. He said things started getting really bad after his birthday in 2019. And he said he got into a motorcycle accident and they found out he had a brain tumor and then he had a gamma knife radiation procedure. But he says as time went on, things started to stack up. He said he was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and the doctors told him he had 6 weeks to live. But then he went to Germany and got some sort of miraculous treatment, which actually gave him 3 more years, which he was thankful for. Lots of stuff we didn't know about there. Just to show you how private this family was. It was just unbelievably intense. And he talked about, Howard had that letter that Sammy wrote on the show when he talked about reconciling with Eddie. Throughout this whole press tour process, he was very quiet about Hagar. He didn't say much about Hagar. You notice that, Dave?
Yeah, but he didn't say much about Dave either.
Yeah, it was interesting. Well, he did talk about Dave.
He didn't say much about, I mean, he was pretty emphatic that, the music is his, he's doing his own thing. Mm-hmm. He really didn't dwell too much on Van Halen other than to say, the band is done.
Well, no, he got into a whole bunch of stuff. I'll get into it. But he said that they were talking and texting the last couple months, which was nice, and he was happy to see that. He said his mom did a fantastic job giving me a grounded childhood, and that the fame of his parents were never in the forefront of his mind, which is interesting. I mean, his parents are super famous, but, for some reason, he was able to maintain that regular guyness. You know what I'm saying? He told Rolling Stone that his mom is the reason I am the person I am today. She really did everything. He got into the whole thing about his dad and him used to really jam out to AC/DC. They were big fans of the album Powerage, which is fantastic. It's my favorite AC/DC album. I love that album because that was their band. They loved AC/DC so much. When he talked about his song Distance, he said that it was a song about loss overall, and that writing music is a great way of getting those emotions out so they don't sit in your head forever. It's nice to get those feelings realized. When they asked him if he played the song for Hed, he said he played it for him, and he said they just cried together. It was hard to sing through and play through, but it really did connect with him. But he didn't know it was about him, but he loved the song anyway, and that his father would always say it's the best album he's ever heard. He was very proud of his son, obviously. And Howard got into going back to when he first got into the band. So he talked about joining the band, and he says the first thing they did was play the song On Fire, which is kind of interesting. Of all things, he decided to start with that one. Told Rolling Stone, he says, it felt right to be playing with Al and Dad. The three of us just kind of melded together musically in a way I'll never experience for the rest of my life. Obviously, there's an instant connection there. He said they jammed for months with no goal in mind. And then it reached a point where it was like, this could actually go somewhere. He says, then I brought up the idea of calling Roth. And he actually said that at age 14, he picked up the phone and called David Lee Roth's manager. What do you make of that?
So it's true.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yep.
I think it's because, honestly, nobody else in the band wanted to talk to him. And then I think Ed was just like, you want him in the band? You call him. So Wolf was like, all right.
I wonder
I will.
I wonder. I wonder if
But
Ed
it's
even thought he'd do it.
He was the guy. This 14-year-old kid is reforming Van Halen.
It's
right?
unbelievable.
It's amazing. And he did it.
Yep, he did it. And let me tell you something. This kid did a lot. All these interviews prove that everything we got over the past 13 years is all because of him. The set lists, the albums, the tours, it's all because of him, really. And then he says that Roth came in December of 2005. It was that long before it. I mean, the tour started in 2007, but they actually got together in December of 2005. And he says they played On Fire. And he says it was really, really good. While he was on tour with them, he said most of the time he was either tutoring or playing video games on the bus. when Howard asked him about Al, he was kind of tight-lipped about Al. He didn't have a lot to say, but he says that they do check in with each other every day just to say, hey, love you. If you need anything, call. But he hasn't spoken to Sam, and he hasn't spoken to Dave, but Gary has reached out. When Howard asked him about Michael Anthony, he asked if there was any reconciliation with Michael Anthony because of the rift between him and Ed. He says, not directly, but it was kind of in the process. He says, if Dad was still here, it would have been happening. And he said when he first joined the band, he couldn't blame anybody for having a cynical response. What the fuck are they doing? That kid, are you serious? And he says, people never believed I was playing or singing. It was the ultimate compliment. And then he told Rolling Stone that he was ready to retire from Van Halen pretty much because he was talking about this kitchen sink tour. He had suggested bringing Mike back into the band for the 2019 reunion that we all heard about, this stadium tour. Him and his dad called it the kitchen sink tour. This was all Wolf's idea. The whole damn thing was Wolf's idea, which is unbelievable. So what he said was he actually sold his father on this idea, which is unbelievable to me if you ask it. He said, Dad, just hear me out. And he says, what if we got everybody together and went on tour? Meaning like, we'll bring Mike back in the band. You'll have Dave and Sam to play with. We'll even bring Gary, and then I'll open for the show. Initially, Ed kept saying, well, you have to be there too. You have to be there too. And he says, I'll come on for a few songs from A Different Kind of Truth. But he says, as time went on, he warmed up to the idea. He got excited about it. We were joking at calling the kitchen sink tour. He says, after he was okay with that arrangement, he said, let's get Dave and Hagar and Sharon and do a giant awesome thing. We talked to Irving Azoff about how cool it would be. And Irving then went out and reached out to Mike before I had the chance to. We wanted me to do that, but by that time, Dad wasn't able to. So I guess he wanted to sort of mend that fence by extending that offer to Mike himself. And then Irving jumped the gun and went and reached out to Mike before that even happened. Most likely he was trying to book dates and get things going.
Irving, once he smells money.
Oh, forget it.
Can't wait.
He can't.
He can't wait.
He
Can't
cannot.
wait.
He cannot.
Although
wait.
really, I can't blame him because with this group, you want to get going while the fire is hot. Because with this band, they could change their mind tomorrow.
Right. But when Rolling Stone asked him if he ever had a personal conversation with Mike, he says, I've never had too much of an opportunity. That's kind of what the whole tour was supposed to be, and then it never panned out. And I'm looking forward to speaking with him, and it hasn't happened yet, but I'm looking forward to the opportunity that I have in the future to speak with him. So he's planning on reaching out to Mike despite of what happened. And then Rolling Stone asked him if there's any hard feelings. He says, I don't think there are. I've seen things he said, and he's always been an amazing guy. But he also said playing with his father was the best thing and his favorite thing he ever did. But obviously things weren't going to happen because Ed wasn't well, and that whole kind of tour fell to pieces. And Howard went all over the place. So he was talking about all kinds of stuff. So he said in terms of playlist, he says when they initially got together with just the three of them, Al and Ed and Wolf, they were playing both Hagar and Roth era songs. And what Wolf had done was made a big chalkboard of all the different songs they were doing. And when Dave finally showed up, he said, Dave looked up at the playlist and says, what's Get Up? And he said, whoops. So I guess he forgot to erase the Hagar songs.
Right. Roth was like, don't know that one.
Right, exactly. So he also talked about his father's alcoholism, where he was saying he was the most anxious person and that's why he drank, because he would use the alcohol to hide his anxiety. But when he was sober, it took me to focus him and harness his anxious energy. But he also says that he does not smoke weed or drink or do any of that stuff. He says that his mom did a really good job of hiding all the bad shit from me. It wasn't until I was in the band that everything was very real. And then I realized, oh yeah, this is an issue. So obviously that was, pretty good. And he says he was the one who got Eddie into rehab. He said that Eddie went willing and said, yeah, okay, that he was okay with going. And he told Rolling Stone, he said he was like, fuck yeah, whatever we got to do. Wolf said that I had to mature very quickly in order to handle everything that was being thrown at me early on in my life. So obviously, once he joined the band, he really had a rude awakening of what was happening. He also got into the music vault. Now, this is what everybody wants to talk about. So he says there's a shit ton of tapes that will take a very long time to grow through, but it's not a priority now. He says he can't put a timeline on it, but not in the immediate future. But now when he heard the Irving Azoff story, he didn't mention Irving's name, but when they were like, oh, Wolf's up there looking through the tapes, and he says, where the fuck did that come from? Which I thought was interesting considering the situation. He says that if he took his time and spent his time going through his father's tapes, he says, my dad would be pissed off at me. He says, go do your shit. Don't go through my old shit. Go do your new shit. But he says, mark my words, there will be a time when we go through it. Just not right now and not in the foreseeable future. When he spoke to Spin, Dave, this comment is going to knock your socks off. Wait till you hear this comment. I almost died. When he said this is unbelievable. Oh, my God. So he said, talking about the vault, he says, this might hurt Van Halen fans, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a decade until we dive into the vaults, because it's going to be a long process.
Yeah, that's tough to hear. That's really tough.
So good night, nurse.
If he's not going to dive in until a decade from now.
Yeah, good night.
And that means at least another couple of years before something comes out. I mean,
everybody's gone.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's almost too late. Like, where's your audience?
Well, that's the thing, is that,
come on, man. You can't, I get you don't want to dive into it right now.
No, I don't think he should. I think the bottom line is, listen, not telling the guy what to do. I understand it's emotional. He doesn't want to deal with it. I think what has to happen is Alex really has to take the reins and maybe, hire some people to work on a team or something. In the Eddie Trunk interview, this is what he says on Eddie Trunk. He got very specific about the vaults on Eddie Trunk. He got crazy. So he went into all kinds of stuff here. He says it's going to take an unbelievable amount of time to go through it, and it's not a priority. He says they're going to need a special oven to bake the tapes to remove the audio off of it and digitize it. He says to go through everything in there, it would take a solid year of working 5 days a week. We will go through the vault at some point, but don't hold your breath. He says there's infinite amount of tapes that will take infinite amount of time to go through, and we want to do it right. And I'd have to have Al there with me to ask, do you remember what this was called? It just says song number 2. It's going to take a really long time. And he also said, listen, I'm sure it's good, but there's a reason it's still in there. All the good shit came out. Of course, knowing my dad, there has to be amazing shit in there, but he recorded what he wanted for a reason. So he talked about his band, and he said that he has a band, and the band consists of drummer Garrett Wetlock from Tremonti, guitarist Frank Sidoris from Slash's Conspirators, and bassist Ronnie Ficcaro from Falling in Reverse and I Am Ghost. He says that they've been rehearsing since late 2018, and Ed saw them play and really loved the band. Now, one of the tracks that he leaked to Howard was a song called You're to Blame, and here's a clip.
World still spins around without you. No one but yourself to blame. Fought so hard, but nothing's gonna change. You're to blame.
So this song is way more rock attack oriented, so this sounds fantastic. I happen to love both songs, but wow, talk about the song variants on the two tracks, Dave. What did you make of that?
That song was rocking.
Yep.
Really, again, well done, well executed. The singing, phenomenal. Background vocals on both songs used really well. And to me, it almost had a little bit of a Tony Iommi vibe going on with the riff there.
Oh, totally.
But again, really well done, well executed. And, if the whole album is like that, I'm more curious than ever.
Oh, yeah. No, that song was incredibly promising. Distance was great. Now, apparently, according to his interview with Elvis in the Morning, he addressed that Distance is not on the album. This is a separate song. He says it wasn't even supposed to be on the first album. This is an idea he was holding for later, was considering it. It's sort of a separate outlier from the album. The album is going to be released, although he wouldn't give a name of the album. He is going to be releasing it, he said, spring-ish. Eddie Trunk started saying, whoa, I heard February, and he says, like later than that, more like probably like April or May or early June, somewhere in that vicinity, he's going to be releasing it. So we'll have to see. And what he's doing with the single of Distance is he's giving all the proceeds that he makes from it to the Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation, which is